Yo, good morning, Chad, or good evening, wherever you're from, or maybe good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to another episode of Live Recon. If you're not familiar with the stream, if you're watching this live for the first time, or if you're catching the VOD later on YouTube, my name is Ben, but most of you guys know me online as NahamsecTraining. We do this little stream every Sunday, well, almost every Sunday, unless I'm taking the day off, where we either hack a company, which we're going to do later during the stream live on Twitch, or we bring a guest and we interview them. So today we're going to do both. If you're watching the VOD and you don't see the live hacking portion of it, it's because I don't post them usually, or you have to be a member. But if you're watching this, the interview portion of this stream will go live on YouTube to watch later on. Cool. How's everyone doing today? Now that I got that out of the way, how's everyone? What is everyone up to? How was everyone's weekend? Did you guys do anything fun? Did you hack on anything? I'm going to go through chat really quickly and give a few shout outs. Let's see. Shout out to Conan Fox for the one tier 1 sub. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. No one 2021. Thank you so much for the sub. Anonymous Gifter. Thank you so much for that as well. Say Hi and JC Dekai. Thank you so much for all those subscriptions. Let's see who's in the chat. I see Golden One. What's up, man? Nice to see you in the chat as always. Just a guy. How you doing? Elliot, how you doing, my friend? That's a lot of our regulars have joined us today. All right. A little bit about our guest, Douglas. I'm going to let him tell us his story, but I've met Douglas a bunch of times at the HackerOne live hacking events. He's either had some really cool stories about hacking, and he's also one of the only people at these live hacking events that taken my bait to shotgun a Red Bull with me. So I really appreciate that. He was one of the only people that when I was having a really good live hacking event in Denver, I walked up to him, I was like, hey, will you do a shotgun with me? And he took me up on that. And the next time he saw me in Vegas, he asked me if I was going to do another one with him. And I will always forever remember that, because not a lot of people do that. A lot of people want to shotgun Red Bulls, let alone beer. But outside of that, I've also seen him rap. I don't know if we're going to talk about that as much, but maybe we'll talk about it. But he's always on some really cool presentations. I know he has won, I think, an award on collaboration a few times, and he's just been crushing it at these live hacking events. So let's invite Douglas to the stream and welcome him and get to know him a little bit. Before I bring that, I see a few people that are giving shout outs to Ebsec. Thank you for being here, man. I appreciate you. Also, Ryan, aka Zero Day, dude. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you guys. All right, it is time to bring in our guest. Hey, man, how you doing?
Hey Ben, what's going on?
Good, man. Thank you for doing this, and thank you for joining me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for the invite. It's funny that you bring up the Red Bull story because you had asked me like right in the middle of my once a day Red Bull addiction. I'd been going on like a Red Bull every single day for about 6 years, and so
Really?
yeah. So you asked the right guy.
Are you still doing that?
No, I'm fasting for until Easter, so I'm about 2 months strong. No
Oh,
Red Bull.
that's right. Rezo told me about that last week. You guys are doing a fast from social media.
Yeah,
You're giving up things. Oh, cool. Very cool. So you have about what, another month or so?
yeah. Just under a month. Just under a
Nice.
month.
Okay.
So
Good for you, man. That's good discipline to give up something you like. It's not
yeah,
easy.
I mean, you do the same thing during November.
November,
So
yeah, for Thanksgiving. It's the worst month to do it, just so you know, because everyone wants to do Thanksgiving, Friendsgiving, and then there's a lot of it's hard to do things like that in the winter or like fall time. It's not really the easiest.
yeah, no kidding. No, but I've never been a coffee guy, but I had to kind of take it up this winter just because going off a Red Bull. I'm like, shoot, I need some caffeine, so I just became a Red Bull guy or a coffee guy overnight.
Coffee, yeah. Coffee. So I'm doing the opposite. I'm cutting out coffee and I'm doing tea now. My partner like just is like just start tea because I did the same thing because I feel like I built a caffeine intolerance. I used to drink a lot of coffee. Like if you watch
Mm-hmm.
my stream, you will see me do like 2 giant things of coffee a day. There's even like an ongoing meme in one of the HackerOne live streams I did that they were counting in the stream, like in the recap video of how many times I'm drinking coffee on the stream. But if you don't really like coffee, good tea is a good place to start too.
Do you do like loose leaf, or you just doing
I have one of those. I went to IKEA and I got these like, I don't know what they're called. It's like you punch it in, you hold it down and it
Oh
opens
yeah.
up. You know what I'm talking about? And you just put the loose leaf in there and put it in your water. And I got some like when I travel, no matter where I go, like especially out of country, I see good tea. I just get some and bring it back with me.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. Plus, doing loose leaf, it just makes you better than everyone else. So
Hey,
this
I
is
didn't know
how
that's a
I
thing,
feel.
but I feel so much superior now that you say
Yeah.
it. I'm very familiar with your story. Like you also told me a little bit more about your story when we were chatting about bringing you on the stream.
Mhm.
But before we get into the hacking portion of it, tell me a little bit about yourself. What do you do? Who are you? Kind of what's your background and what do you do for a living?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess obviously I'm a bug bounty hunter, but I didn't really get into bug bounty until like 2018 or so.
Yeah,
Before that, I was just doing like security engineering at various tech companies. And it was actually through one of those that I kind of discovered HackerOne. I'd never heard of HackerOne until I was working over at New Relic, and they've got a
yeah,
public bug bounty, and was working on their AppSec team, and part of the responsibility was handling these HackerOne reports. So I thought it was pretty cool, but it was interesting was these bugs that people were submitting were like actual bugs in actual software that enterprises were like paying for. And I think
yeah,
I had never realized just how prevalent like real like IDORs, cross-site scripting, those types of bugs were on enterprise level software. It was always something you'd see in like, OWASP juice shop applications or CTFs,
yeah.
run uh, uh, intentionally vulnerable applications. But I'm working on this at this company doing on the bug bounty program, and we have folks like John Botterini or a couple of other folks who are maybe uh, you're not as familiar with, but submitting like really good bugs. And, wow, this is wild. This is like an actual application that people are finding bugs on. And so,
Yeah.
and what I was telling you is we were because New Relic's engineering is based out of Portland, Oregon. We had, as a group, gone to B-Sides PDX, and you were actually giving a talk that like that at that conference in
Yeah.
October 2018. And so uh, basically after attending the conference and going to your talk, I was like, oh, this actually looks like something I could do. All these other folks are making money on our program. Why can't I do it on the other side? And so I spun up my HackerOne account later that evening, and about 2 months later, I got my very first bounty. And yeah, it's been an uphill trajectory ever since.
So you were working on a bug bounty program. You went to
Mhm.
this conference, saw a talk. You were like, "Oh, I can do this," and that
Yeah.
was your pretty much your first interaction with the bug bounty program. You're like, "Okay, I'm gonna on a hacker side," but you were always doing the triage and the security
Mhm.
work with New Relic.
Yep. And then
Nice.
a couple years later, I left New Relic to join Elastic, which is where I'm at now. And so I'm
Nice.
on
Very cool.
Elastic security team, and we also run a bug bounty program, which I actually got the privilege to launch publicly a couple years ago now. And so
Yeah.
it's a great program. Hit it up. It's my baby, my creme de la creme. So
So if you're watching this and you're looking for a good bug bounty program, and being a bug bounty hunter on the receiving side of the vulnerabilities really helps, especially for the bug bounty
yeah,
hunters. So if you're watching this and looking for a program like that, go check them out on HackerOne. What was that first bug you found? Do you remember?
yeah, it wasn't terribly exciting. It was basically it was, oh goodness, let me try to remember. It was a account lockout bypass. So
Okay.
basically, enumerating passwords on one endpoint would lock the account. But I found a without going into much detail because the
Yeah.
bug isn't disclosed. There was another way to uh, there was another way to enumerate passwords without being locked out.
Okay, got it. And so that was your first vulnerability, and you've been hacking since
Yeah,
it'd be like what 5 years almost.
yeah. It was actually so I was in Orlando this earlier this year in January, and I realized that was the fifth year that I had been gone to a live hacking event because my first live hacking event was Vegas in 2019,
Nice.
almost a year after I started hacking. And so 2019, 2020, 21, 22, and then now 23. It's 5 years
Oh.
of life hacking events. It goes by fast. I feel really old.
So before all of this, did you? So was that your first time like getting into hacking, or did you have any hacking background previous to this?
No, and I'm actually kind of jealous of all these like hackers that I see coming on like your interviews or giving talks, and they're like, "Yeah, I was, you know, taking apart my computer at age 4." I'm like, I wasn't like that. I was just busy being like a, I guess, a boring kid in high school, and even into college. Like I took some, my degrees in computer science, so I guess I had
Okay.
some like intro dev experience. But my first job wasn't like security related at all. It was just doing like software support. Um,
Yeah.
so like didn't I thought security was cool, and I maybe followed a couple of security subreddits, but no, I don't really have much of a super elite hacker background or anything, and up until probably 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I'm getting old. About 8 years ago, when I got my first security job, which was just being like a little SOC analyst.
Yeah, and I mean that's also a cool way to put it, because then it just shows that if you are passionate about something, you find something intriguing enough,
Hmm.
you want to go and do it, you still can, even if you haven't done it since you were a kid, right?
Yeah,
There's room for everybody, and the community is welcoming enough for anybody of anybody's background, what they have done, no matter how much of your experience is. There's always room to to do these kinds of things, right?
exactly. Yeah, because I used to get intimidated by hearing these people who were talking about how they had been programming since they were a kid and taking apart their parents' computer, and I'm like, man, I'm
Yeah.
not that smart. I'm not that good. And so it just kind of was it wasn't until my mid 20s that I really actually started getting into security.
Yeah. You mentioned school,
Hmm.
and you said you did computer science, and
Yeah.
you got a degree in computer science. Did you do anything with cybersecurity in that program, and did it help you in any way with what you do with as a hacker, at least?
Yes, yes, and yes, but not, uh, I guess, in an obvious way. I did take a cryptography class, and so but it was a lot more theory than actual like application.
Yeah.
So, right, like one of my projects, my senior project for that class was basically writing the Enigma machine, which was used in World War II. So I think I
Yeah.
wrote it in Python, and so that was kind of the only security thing that I did, was taking a cryptography class. But yes, it's helped me in cybersecurity, just because of I guess the grit it kind of develops. You
Yeah.
know, part of hacking is just in bug bounty hunting is just banging your head on the wall, just having endurance and not giving up, and that's kind of all of what having to do 5 years of college is. So
Yeah.
that's not to say you don't need to go to. I mean, obviously you don't need to go to college or get a degree in computer science to be successful in security, but at least for me, it was helpful to have that linear track of progression to kind of build grit and have like a long term goal to work forward to,
Yeah.
which has kind of helped with bug bounty.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I think with college, it just depends. Can you learn things on your own? And if you can't learn things on your own, you need a formal education, someone that helps you go to college. If you're really good
Yep.
at learning things on your own, then the stuff that we're doing, you can learn on your own. You can. There's so many good
Mhm.
online resources. Not even just hacking. If you wanted to become a developer, you can go learn all those things on your own. But you better have good discipline to be able to do those things on your own, right?
Exactly.
Becomes harder.
And as a 20-something-year-old, I mean, I think now I've got the discipline because I'm older
Yeah.
now. I'm in my 30s, but as like a 21, 22, 23 year old, I didn't have that kind of discipline. I didn't have the
Most kids,
like
most people that are that age don't have the
yeah.
discipline, man. You're not alone.
Yeah. So it gives me a lot of respect for people like Roni, uh, or some of the other like younger bug bounty
Yeah.
hunters who are just like college age and self starters. And like goodness, like Corbin. Again,
Ruby. Ruby is
Ruby,
one
yeah,
of Ruby was very young when he came into bug bounties. He was like maybe 15, 16 when I first met him in Vegas, and I was like, who is this kid? It's
yeah,
super young, like, but you think about it, he had good discipline to do all these things by himself.
yeah, yeah. I have massive respect for those for
Yeah,
those
for sure.
guys. It wasn't me, but I guess here I am on my own path. So.
Hey man, everybody takes a unique path to get where they are, and it looks like what you did worked out for you so far.
Yeah, so far.
Um, so you went to school, you did computer science, you did a little bit of security. What about now? Do you have any certificates? Have you done any certs at all? What's your take on
No,
it?
no, there are. I guess it kind of depends on the route you want to go. I'm not, planning to be like a CISO anytime soon. I'm not planning on, I love the bug bounty world enough that, or I love the bug bounty world more than I like the security engineering world. And
Yeah,
so for me, a cert doesn't necessarily seem too much down my path. I know that the people who have taken the OSCP though, they've said that that's been very valuable to them,
yeah,
both in career development and just in the skills that it requires. But it's not on my roadmap.
yeah. I think with at least bug bounties, I don't really think you need a cert. If you want to become if you come from a different background, maybe you're an IT person, you're security, not in security, and you want to make that switch,
Mhm.
cert's a really good place to start. And I don't honestly think being a CISO requires to have too many um, certs. If that's the requirement to become a CISO, then I don't think I want that job ever. Because that
Right.
doesn't having certs doesn't really mean that you know that things right. It just means you pass an exam.
Yep.
Who knows if you can actually um, do those kinds of work?
Right. Yeah, that's totally fair.
What about knowing how to code? Do you know how to code, and do you think it's a requirement to get into hacking, or more specifically with bug bounties?
So no, I don't think you need to, but I am becoming more and more convinced every year that I do bug bounty that it is very, very helpful to be able to like write tools, but more so to be able to do like code analysis. Like
Yeah,
one of the hackers that I really respect, Dominic Couture, DC, he's over
you
at
see.
GitLab.
Hmm.
He is very good at writing code. He is very good at reading code, and as such, he finds bugs that I'm not able to find just because he in a particular program they might have their source code like up in a GitHub.
Yeah,
He can take a look at the source code, know what to grep for, know what to look for, know what a function's doing, and be able to find a bug that I wouldn't be able to find unless I like was able to boot up the application and poke around with it with Burp and some other tools. And so I think it's extremely helpful, and it's a skill that I'm trying to grow currently, both for writing tools to help me, to help some automation, but also to be able to do like white box testing and source code
yeah,
review.
for sure. Yeah, I think um, it's always the same answer I give is knowing how to script versus knowing how to code. Really,
Yeah.
scripting really does help you. Coding, if you're going to be doing source code analysis, definitely it's going to help. But finding IDORs, even cross-site scripting, SSRF, most of these bugs you don't need to know how to code. Maybe if you want to get some really dope RCEs, that's gonna need some
Mhm.
programming. If you want to get some SQL injections, you gotta understand how a database works. So those are the ones that I say you need to learn how to code for. But absolutely, man, there are good examples of people that don't code and are finding great bugs, but there are even better examples of people that are finding really, really good bugs like DC or even Shubs. They're finding crazy stuff by having access to the source code and going through it and doing code review over at Asset Note.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, I don't think you need it, but I think it's pretty helpful, and it's a skill that I wish I was stronger at,
Yeah.
because I don't know how to read code very well, so I can't find those kind of cool esoteric bugs. But yeah, IDORs, cross-site scripting, that's in the bag.
I think DC also has a CTF background that's also insane.
Yeah,
So he has that, I never give up mentality of a CTF player, and then he knows how to read code, and it makes it even better.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Another good example is Alex Chapman at
Alex, yeah,
Vegas. Vegas last year, we were working on an RCE that required a custom XSS payload.
yeah,
And he just because of his coding experience and his ability to kind of understand what different functions are doing, he is able to write a pretty complex payload to get an XSS to fire in a headless Chrome browser, which ultimately gave us an RCE, which was a awesome bug. It's still like levels above my head, but yeah, that
Um, Alex helped me get an RC a couple of weeks ago on a headless browser on the bigger target of that event.
oh
It
the
was
day two target.
Yeah, and it
Yep,
was
that was
insane,
same
man.
target.
Yeah, it was insane. The way that guy's brain works is insane.
Yeah.
Um, very excited to see. I'm really trying to get him to come on this stream. So hopefully having you on here and then Rezo on here kind of convinces him like, okay, I want to go on this thing and talk for an hour and then people kind of understand how he works. But he's done some crazy shit and it's insane to see it.
Yeah, he's extremely intelligent. Yeah,
Absolutely.
and get him and get DC on, and you've got our whole team.
DC would be a really, really good one, actually. Yeah, maybe I'll. So I'm taking a break next week, and then when I come back, I
Mhm.
may go after DC. I don't think I've. Maybe I have done an interview with DC. I gotta check. I've been doing this for so long now that I don't know if I'm like literally looking up to see if I've done an interview with DC. I don't remember if I've done an interview or not. I
Yeah.
don't think I've done that. Look at it. I'm have to look at it and see. Speaking of CTFs, do you play any CTFs?
No, no. And again, that's like a skill that I'm really jealous of. Like, I think the longer we go into this interview, the more things you'll find that I don't do.
And that's okay because it shows you don't have to do everything to become
Yeah,
good, man. It's a
yeah,
really good way to show people that you have to do what works for you.
yep, yeah. But no, I was super into ARGs as a
Okay.
kid,
Yeah.
uh, and I think that kind of like has helped me a lot. But the problem, I guess, with CTFs is that once I got into bug bounty, I kind of have to compare, like, weigh the time cost benefit of like participating in a CTF versus doing bug bounty, and I'm like, man,
Mhm.
CTFs sound really fun, but I also have been able to kind of put a dollar value on my time, which is so limited that I'm like, oh, do I spend 3 hours working on the CTF for the lulz, or do I spend 3 hours hacking on target XYZ and probably make X number of dollars? And it's like
Yeah.
it's hard to be able to not do bug bounty and do a CTF instead when I've kind of just gotten so deep into bug bounty. So
Yeah, I mean, you also have more responsibilities now than you did 5, 6, 7 years ago, right?
yeah,
Your time spent doing CTFs for fun and even for the bragging rights is not the same as you spending time with your family, spending time on your weekends with people that you want to hang out with because you're working most of the days on Monday through Fridays, and doing bug bounties on the top of it, and traveling for these events and that kind of stuff, right?
yep, yeah. My schedule's a bit wild with church events, with bug bounty, with my full time job, with 2 kids, with a snowboard that I try to get out enough
Yeah,
times in the winter to be able to justify paying an absurd lift ticket price. And so
yeah.
it's yeah, maybe college me would probably be super into CTFs in the same way that high school me was into ARGs, but yeah,
Hmm.
it's just
It's
it's
a return of investment, and you're investing your time, man. So it makes total sense to not want to do CTFs, especially if you have the bug bounty scene to go to and do things and learn different skills. Which if you don't do CTFs and that kind of stuff, how did you get into like hacking? Like, what was the way you were practicing, and how do you learn new concepts nowadays?
yeah, that's a good question. So I guess my initial like motivation for getting into hacking was my wife and I were expecting our first kid, right? And
Yeah,
we're living in a small apartment in Portland, and we're like, we don't have room for a kid here. And so my wife's like, I want a house. I'm like, okay, let's make that happen. And so I needed a 20% down payment, which in West Coast is a lot of money.
yeah,
So I'm like, I just started doing, because this was, I think we found out we were pregnant in the fall of 20 uh, in the fall. No. I started bug bounty hunting actually before we found out. But regardless, we wanted to buy a house in the fall of 2018, and so I had about we knew we wanted to buy in about a year,
yeah,
and so I was like, okay, I just recently gotten my first bounty, and I was like, okay, let's see how far this can go. And I remember thinking, like, if I can get 20K this year, that's a pretty good start. Combine that with some other like savings I have and some other like salaried income, and that can be my down payment. But then, uh, just a year later, it kind of just took off and ended up being way more successful than that. But like the way I started was actually just looking for, and this is still my bread and butter, was looking for like privilege escalations. Right, it just kind
yeah,
of made the most sense to me. I'm not much of an automation guy, although I'm trying to be more this year. So much of the bugs that I look for are just complex web applications that have like various levels of permissions,
Yeah.
and trying to just kind of like futz with those and find where the holes are. And so I sort of early on, I kind of developed this mantra that I still hold on to, and I kind of use it when I mentor new bug bounty hunters, and I call it looking for no's. So basically,
Okay.
when I'm looking at an application, I look for every place that the application tells me, no, you can't do that. And that's where I look for bugs. So, for example, say you're on some type of social app, and the app for some reason doesn't let you edit your comments. That's a no. It's saying no, you can't edit your comments. Or maybe it doesn't let you give more than a 5-star rating. That's a no. It's saying no, you can't give more than a 5-star rating on whatever product. Maybe it's saying no, you can't access this page unless you are paying a subscription. That's a no. And so I look for all these places that the application is saying no, you can't do that, and that's where I try to like poke and press a button and see if I can't bypass that no. And so the bugs that I find aren't particularly like, I'm not finding RCEs and SSRFs and super cool bugs.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they are pretty cool, but but they're not Chapman level uh, RCEs or anything. It's
Right.
it's a way for me to like break a site by giving a car a 50,000 star rating instead of a 5-star rating, and now the suddenly the page that lists all the cars in the inventory is broken, or it's a way for me to change my comment after like the editing window has been closed, or it's a way for me to as a read only user to make like any type of modification to data. Like that's
Yeah.
a and so that's the type of bugs that I look for, and they're just so hard to programmatically protect against that. Okay, there there's no end in sight of when I'll be able to stop finding, or when I'll be able to stop finding them.
Yeah. But how do you learn those things? Like, where did you go to learn these things?
So that's a good question. I think a lot of it really helped just seeing the bugs that were coming into New Relic's bug bounty program, right? Because those were
Yeah.
the types of things that people were looking for on my program. But really, once I saw that that's what people are looking for, I just kind of applied the same mindset, and it's I I, I think that a struggle that a lot of people have when they start bug bounty hunting is that they don't know what is and isn't a bug. And
Yeah.
so when I'm teaching people how to bug bounty hunt, I'll like show them like, oh, you can, this level user is able to do this, and they're like, so, and I'm like, no, that's a bug. It's going against what the documentation says. And they're like, oh, really? That's a bug? I'm like, yes, that's a bug. It might only be a medium or a high. It's not a critical, but yeah, that's something to report. And so there's not like any particular skill or like tool that I spent time like learning. It's more of just how I approach an application and think about what uh, think about the how I'm spending my time there. Um,
Yeah.
it,
So I think one of the things that, like you mentioned, I want to kind of talk about is, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong with this, is you were exposed to these vulnerability types because of your daytime job as you guys
Mhm.
were fixing them,
Yep.
that you understood how it worked. Now you have to apply, how do I look for these as a
Yeah.
hacker, right? Because where you don't see with bug bounty reports, you don't get to see the thought process of, I saw this, I did that, I did this, and I ended up with the exploit. You just get the hackers to say, this is the exploit. Go make this
Yep.
request,
Yeah.
go catch this request, edit it, modify it, whatever. So you knew the concepts. It's just now applying it, and then you applied it by calling them the no's.
Mhm.
Saying that, these are the things that they call a no, and I want to make it into a yes.
Yep.
The way I explain is, what is an application do not what is an application, what is something that the application tells you you can't do, and do exactly the opposite of that, make it
Yep.
happen, whether
Exactly.
it's for idoors, privilege escalation, cross-site scripting, because they don't want you to have HTML, whatever that is. So I think it's just it's the same thing with learning through CTFs, learning through bug bounty platforms, but having the mindset of applying them now to a bug bounty program.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're spot on. You're spot on. It's entirely a mindset thing. And I think that
Um,
once you can kind of like flip that switch, it's hard to not look for those types of issues, even just when you're using an application in your day to day real life.
yeah.
Um, because there's a lot of places where an application says no, you can't do that, and it's like, okay, well, what if I can? And just kind of turning on that sniffer, that third sense of like, oh, this application has a lot of restrictions around what a user can do. There's
Yeah.
probably a lot of bugs to be found there, and sometimes there's not. I'll occasionally run into an application where I'm like, man, I feel like there's a lot of bugs here, but I've spent 3 hours and there's nothing. But most of the time, within about 30 to 60 minutes of testing an application, I can just kind of get a feel for how complex like their permission scheme is and
Mhm.
how many different like moving parts there are, that I could be like, okay, there's probably a lot of privilege escalations here, or there's probably a lot of IDORs here, and that's kind of where I start honing in, is the application is telling me no in a lot of places, so there's probably bugs to be found.
And I think that what I call that tingling feeling of there's a vulnerability here comes with like years of experience, years of
Mhm.
staring at apps, and probably months of not finding vulnerabilities at times that you know, okay, this application has the types of user roles or the functionality that I would look for Prevesk because you have done it for so long and so many
Yep.
times, right?
Yep. Yeah. So to give you another like, concrete example, one like super super big tingly feature that I get on a lot of applications where bugs are just so rampant are self sign up applications that let you belong to one or more than one organization. So, like
Yeah.
for example, if there's an application that lets me start up my own org, and then it also lets you sign up to your own org, but then you can add people. You could like add me to your org so that I exist in like two, and I can like switch between which org I'm in. Like, oh my goodness, those are always riddled with bugs
Yeah.
that let you modify my data because I'm in both organizations. And so that's kind of like one of those big tingly feelings. In fact, so one of my favorite bug stories that I like to talk about, on a private program is is a bug that I found in about like 15 minutes right when the program opened, because it was a self sign up application. It let it let me sign up as my own org owner, let you sign up as your own org owner, and then invite each other. And then of course, I can switch between my org and your org. But because I'm my own org owner, I can modify the emails of any user in my org. So all I had to do to basically take over your account was invite you to my org. And now that you've already got access to your own org, but then because you're also in my org, I can change your email address. And then when I change your email address, that's a password reset. Account takes over.
That's because
And
you log in with the same account into both.
yeah. And so anytime there's an
Incredible.
application that lets you belong to more than one org within whatever application it is like that's like the biggest tingly feeling I get. So
That is a very clever way to look at an account takeover.
mhm.
Because it's
Yeah,
it's it's also beyond Prevest because it's also the thing that I tell everybody in my videos is understanding how the application really works.
yep,
I mean, lucky for you, you understood that 15 minutes in because you understand how Prevest works and how these
yeah,
account takeovers work. But just knowing that you use the same email to sign up for them and then be able to change it, it's a very, very good way to take over both businesses.
yeah.
Even though it's a functionality, right?
Right. Yeah, and so many of the bugs that I find are just like functionality that wasn't fully thought out. One of
Yeah,
my so you mind if I go into another
go
bug
for it,
story?
man.
Yeah, yeah. So one of my favorite bugs that I've ever found. This is again on this was on a private program, um, but and this was when I was working on a team actually with Alex Chapman and Space Raccoon,
Okay.
and so two like super smart guys, and we were working uh, on an online like store, right? Some like store where you could like buy things, right? And
Yeah.
so we were like, we want a way to be able to get someone else's shipping address, like anyone else's shipping address. That was like our North Star, right? So we're like, how can we
Yeah.
do that? So what we did is we went through like every part of the application and found, where does it tell me my own shipping address? Like, okay, ordering something, returning something, looking at the invoice, looking at the receipt, looking at order history, and then let's try to basically see how we can interact with another user of that application in a way that it'll um, show us that user's shipping address.
Yeah.
we tested every part of the application, and we eventually found we had tried like buying something for that other user and shipping it to their address via some type of like wish list functionality, and that still didn't work. It like redacted the recipient's shipping address. And she's like, man, how can we get this victim's shipping address? And so we found a very obscure part of the application that let it was called like parental controls or something, and it basically let you have a teenager user in your account um, order things on your behalf using your credit card, but it required the parent to approve it. And so what we did was we found that if I log in as a teenager account and order something for somebody else, then it will send an invoice to the parent to approve it. But in the invoice that it sends in the approval email, it does not redact the recipient's address. And so it's a very convoluted way of describing
So
a way.
you essentially, yeah, it's just you looking at the workflows of how the access is being leaked.
Yeah. Yes. So basically, it was while it was redacting the recipient's shipping address, when you ordered something, if your kid ordered something for somebody else, then in the email that was sent to you to approve it, it did not redact the.
Wow. So you could order anyone's, if they had a wish list or something, you can order for them and it
Yeah.
would show their address essentially.
Yeah.
I think I kind of also know exactly what program that is because I've chased those things now. But that is very, yeah, it the concept of chasing functionality through an application works.
Yeah.
It's just
And
you have to. It's the same thing with XSS if you think about it, right? Your name's not gonna pop up in the right hand corner when it says "Hi Ben,
yeah.
welcome." Right? It may not pop up there, but you may go somewhere deep in the application where someone reports your comment, and when they go to report it, it says "Thanks for reporting X," and that X is your XSS report, right? It's just chasing functionality to see where your attack scenario that you're thinking about works.
Exactly. And the reason I love that story is because we used zero tools. We didn't like use any type of like automation, any type of like we didn't use Burp Suite for it. We just used a mouse and a keyboard to just
Yeah.
poke around the different pieces of the app, and eventually found some obscure unused part of the application that wasn't redacting the shipping address. So
I think that's also a very good place to mention that you don't need to code to find these bugs.
yeah,
And that's PII. And I'm assuming, a company that's paying maybe, I don't know, as if their max payout is 10K, they would pay 5, 6K for that because
yeah,
it's PII. And although it may cost you a little bit of money, but there are some important people on these websites sometimes that they don't want their address to be leaked, right?
yeah, exactly.
Um, if I had a wish list and then someone's, I use a site that, does my merch and I don't want to have my address, that's really bad if they get my address, right? So
Yeah,
knowing how to do these things, especially understanding a company's threat model and finding these kinds of holes is what makes it really, really interesting.
yeah, exactly. It was super fun vulnerability.
Let's talk about recon because you mentioned you're not an automated guy. Not to change the topic, but
Mhm.
I love the stories because I don't know why I don't ask people to tell me about their favorite bugs. So I
Mhm.
think because of you, I may have to add that into the stream again to ask them like, tell me about some of the bugs you found.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
this is a live recon show, and it's not a live recon show until I ask a little bit about recon. So tell me a little bit, man. What does recon mean to you? Do you do a lot of recon? I think you already answered that part of it. And yeah, what does that look like to you?
Uh, I do recon, but not in the way that a lot of other hackers do recon. I'm not like just FF or fuffing over various endpoints trying to find random exposed web servers. The recon that I do is typically after I find a target and I'm getting deep in an application and I want to know like something more about it. I'll like look through the target's GitHub repositories, maybe
Yeah.
like trying to find some type of like internal subdomain to potentially look for like an SSRF target. Looking for maybe going through their GitHub repositories, maybe looking for like an internal email address to try signing up as. And so it's much more like manual recon process. That's
Yeah.
not to say that recon is bad. In fact, I know lots of hackers that are very good at it. Mayonnaise is
Mayonnaise.
absurd,
Yeah.
and yeah, there's lots of stuff to be found. In fact, I've worked on teams. I think Res Zero or Rezo is pretty good at it, and we when working on his team, he'll often find very niche parts of an application that we wouldn't, like basically secret scope, that we wouldn't otherwise be able to find. And I think that that's super helpful. But I'm not opposed to it, and it's something that I recently realized, like this year is kind of my year of growth in bug bounty. I invested, I bought Burp Suite Pro for like one of the first times, and it already paid for
Nice.
itself. And I'm like, yes, it was worth the investment. And I'm starting to build out some private automation, um, mostly looking at like GitHub workflows and trying to find RCEs and supply chain vulnerabilities in workflows. But as far as just doing a bunch of scanning on like a VPC, that's not really my approach.
Okay. What are some of your favorite tools you use as far as, besides Burp Suite? We'll talk about Burp in a little bit, but what are some of your favorite tools that, you mentioned FF. I don't know if you use it as much, but what are some of your other favorite ones?
So when I want to know subdomains, I'll use Subfinder. Actually, let me pull up my terminal. I've got a directory of tools. So I use Subfinder. I like using Elasticsearch just for like data searching. So when I do a lot of or when I do scanning, it's really useful to put stuff in Elasticsearch, or at least that's the ideal, to put it in Elasticsearch. I can like visualize my data, keep track of different assets, and have easily searchable and visualizable vulnerability and recon data. But as far as like kind of nifty tools, I use Subfinder. I use Rogen and Rogen, or the Tender Security Team's GitHub workflow auditor tool, and GitHub. That's kind of most of my tools, and then obviously Burp Suite. So,
are you a heavy like Burp user as far as like add-ons and that kind of stuff goes, or are you just using vanilla Burp for proxy and repeater purposes?
I like using Autorizer. I think when I'll never use Autorizer first, because I think that I like to manually go through the application, see how the application is supposed to work, and that kind of touches on what we were talking about, going deep into like the different workflows of an application. But after I've kind of gone through and tried, this piece of functionality with different levels of users, and this piece of functionality with different levels of users, kind of satisfied with my manual testing, then I'll go into Autorizer and then just see if I can pick up any stragglers. And I usually can on some like obscure random endpoint that's I missed.
You mentioned you just bought Burp Suite, just recently. What were you using before? Was it Zap, or was it the community version?
Community version. And it was kind of just, I kick myself for it, because so many times I would be like, oh, I really need this. I really need this piece of functionality. I really want the engagement tools to get a CSRF POC. I really want to be able to use the intruder and get more than like one request a second. I really want to be able to search through my Burp history. I can't. And so I bit the bullet in January, and it's so funny because I bought Burp, paid the $450 or like $450 or whatever, and then like 2 days later, it immediately came in helpful and like paid for itself. I'm like, why have I been delaying like paying for this application? And so never again will I go back to Burp Suite Community Edition.
Hey man, at least you reinvested the money you were making for bug bounties to pay for it, and it looks like that investment paid itself off, and you kind of like made the money back with it.
Yep. Yeah. So
cool. Let's usually we're almost coming to the time, and I think we're doing really good on time. I usually end the stream on a little bit of a personal level, where I ask about mental health and that kind of stuff. To kick it off, do you have some sort of a daily routine or things you do every day to kind of get you get you through the day, or do you have like a morning routine to set you up for the day? How does that work for you? Do you have any of that?
Yeah, I try to. With a young child, it kind of gets thrown off pretty often. But I've found that the days that I feel the best, and I do my best in my day job, do my best in my personal life, and do the best in hacking, are the days when right before I start work, I can just go for like a 15-minute run, just to get my blood going, get some fresh air, get my heart rate up and just going for like a 15-minute run for like, I don't run fast. I run like 10:30s because I'm got short, tiny legs. I'm only 5'4". And so I'll like go on a run, and after like 15 minutes, it's only been like a mile and a half. I'll come in and I'll be like, I'll feel so much better and can just feel like I started the day on a win. And yeah. So that's one. That's one. Trying to think of some others. I like to journal at the end of each night, and ideally in the morning. I'm less good at journaling in the mornings than I am at night.
See, I'm the other way around. Mornings are easier than dumping everything off your brain and doing it at the end of the night.
Oh yeah, I mean, I probably could benefit from doing it in the morning. It's
okay, so you journal at nights and you run in the mornings. Okay.
Yep. Aside from that, I think probably the biggest thing that helps me is having like dedicated hacking time. Like at the beginning of the week on Sundays, my wife and I will do what we call our weekly schedule, where we'll just like write out what we're planning to do each day of the week, and I'll make sure that I budget time to do hacking, like on like Wednesday night, Friday morning, and Saturday morning, right? So just maybe like 5 to 10 hours of bug bounty hunting in the week, but it's all budgeted. And so I never feel like I'm like, as long as I'm keeping that commitment and hitting those hours, I never feel like I'm slacking, and I never kind of get that guilty feeling of, oh, I should be hacking, because I know that I'll be hacking during this hour and this hour. And it also gives me a lot of like ability to step away. Like if I happen to have some free time on like Tuesday night or whatever, and I'm hacking and I'm not having much luck, I don't feel bad stepping away, because I know I'm going to be able to hack. I've already like budgeted the time to hack the following evening.
I think not feeling guilty is a big one to like get a hold of when you say you're gonna do something, and life happens, man. You gotta be okay with it. But staying consistent, I think, is also the other thing that I think you kind of mentioned, is knowing that you're gonna hack another day, you're gonna hack during those hours, and staying consistent. But I think consistency comes with a price, and I want to kind of see if you struggle with this. What about like burnouts? Do you feel yourself burning out with how much you're working with life, going to these events, hacking? Does that happen for you often?
Yeah, it does. I think last year was harder with burnout than this year so far. But what's been helpful is at the beginning of this year, I kind of resolved that my goal is not necessarily to make X number of dollars, and that kind of has taken a lot of pressure off. My goal is rather to just put in the hours that I say I'm going to put in, and ideally the money will happen by itself, and it has so far. And so making the goal to put in the hours that I say I'm going to put in, and also to work or to try to learn new technologies and tools, and that's also been going well. So,
but do you recognize a burnout happening? Or do you if it does happen, how do you deal with it, or is that something that you've gotten control over and you don't struggle with anymore?
I'd say it happens less. It happened quite a bit a couple years ago, and even into last year, like I was saying. And yeah, I can see it happening. Thankfully, I've got a very like supportive wife, and so I think a lot of my ability to get out of it has been my support network, and not necessarily myself.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's really helpful to have someone who's recognizing you going into burnout and having them encourage you and remind you to like zoom out, because every single time I've burnt out and I've had like a rough patch where I didn't find a bug for a while, like I've consistently gotten back into it, gotten back in the game, and started finding bugs again. And so it's kind of like with the market, right? Like when in doubt, zoom out. And so if I'm in a rough patch and I'm feeling depressed or discouraged because I'm not finding bugs and I'm putting in hours and nothing's coming, and I feel like I've peaked and I'm past my prime and I'm a wash up now, I just like zoom out. I'm like, okay, this is just a dip. Just ride the dip, just like I would with like Bitcoin or something.
It's really hard to go into the dip without being able to level your brain to say I'm not washed up, because between I And for 6 months before H1702, especially, I went through that for almost 6 months of like, okay, this is it. I'm washed up. I'm a content creator now. I'm no longer hacking. H1702 happened. That was a boost of confidence because there's
Yeah.
a whole other story to that. But I pretty much showed up with 0 bugs to H1702, and I ended up number 9 or something on that one of the programs by just hacking the day of, right? But I wasn't expecting it. It's not to say like, good job for me. It was just like, that's it. Like I went to, I think, I don't know who it was. Maybe it was you guys. It was Yassine and John Bottarini. They go on stage and they show their bugs with a customer, right? The first night customer.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, man, like they're finding cool stuff. So I pull somebody out. I think I pulled John. I was like, hey, did you find that before the event or at the event? He goes, no, I was just bored and I just looked at bugs and I found these. And I was like, fuck, man, why haven't I tried? Like,
Yeah.
everyone had a week or two and I thought it was just done. So that night I stayed up all night and
Mm-hmm.
I found bugs. But it got me out. So like what my point of that story is that you just have to remember you still have those skill sets. It's just gonna take a while to get back into it and build that muscle to want to hack again. And when you don't hack for a few months or for a few weeks, that muscle goes away. So it's a lot harder to get on the computer
Yep.
and want to, stare on an application for a few hours, knowing you're not gonna find anything, and then looking for more bugs, and then eventually you find a vulnerability. And I'm big on momentum, so you build that momentum of finding
Yeah.
vulnerabilities and you never stop. So it's refreshing to hear the dip thing of saying, I've never heard anyone say, oh yeah, I tell myself I'm washed up, because that's exactly what I tell myself, right?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's very relatable, dude, and having a support really, really helps.
For sure. And like, I guess to quote David Goggins, right? Like now you've got that experience of 702 in your cookie jar, that like the next time you're like feeling washed up, or the next time you go to live event, you're like, I don't have any bugs. What am I going to do? I'm a wash up. I'm past my prime. You can be like, oh yeah, this exact same thing happened in 2022. I showed up to Vegas with no bugs, and then I ended up on ninth on the leaderboard. It's like you've got data now, and so you just zoom out, and it's just a dip. So
The zoom out thing is a very, very good analogy to think about. I'm going to keep that in mind for the
mm-hmm.
next time I hit that dip. Okay, one last question. Let's talk about imposter syndrome. You go to these live hacking events. You are on the stage a lot of the times. You're doing show and tells. Do you
Yeah,
ever struggle with imposter syndrome at all?
all the time. Yeah, um,
Yeah.
I think but it's interesting that I didn't ever struggle with imposter syndrome until I started to do good in bug bounty, and I think
Oof.
that's because my ego started to inflate pretty fast when I started hitting success, get invited to live event, and I started to I guess view myself a lot higher than I should. And so as soon as there was like a time when I felt like I was not as good as I had built myself up to be, I started feeling threatened and defensive and not and that's when like the imposter syndrome would set in. And so I think keeping myself humble and realizing that yes, I'm not an imposter, but everyone here is really, really smart. But I'm blessed to be like the dumbest person in the room, because now I can learn from them and grow. And I'm not competing against them. I'm competing against myself. And
Yeah.
this is like a little boost. Like, it's like a Mario Kart when you're driving over those like little boosters.
Yeah.
Like this live event where I'm, hanging out with people like Chapman or DC or all these like, hot shot 20-year-olds who are finding
Yeah.
crits. Like these are, maybe I'm not as good as them, but who cares? I'm going to be smarter tomorrow because of them. So let's view them as I guess as an asset and not as a threat to my like pride and ego.
Absolutely, man. And on the topic of being, the quote unquote the dumbest person in the room, if you walk into a room and you are the smartest person in that room, then you're probably in the wrong room.
Right. Yeah. And if you happen to still be the smartest person in the room, that's a good opportunity for you to grow your your mentoring skills and your teaching skills. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Very cool, man. I know there's a few questions in the chat that I try to keep up with. The biggest one that I want to ask you, and last question before we let you go, what's your advice for anyone that wants to get into bug bounties or hacking in general?
I kind of what I said earlier about looking for nodes. Like that's been my ideal approach whenever I look at a new target. I'm not spraying XSS payloads everywhere. I'm not trying to necessarily find like SSRFs or RCEs. I'm not like doing much scanning. I'm just looking at an application, understanding how it works, and finding where the application says no. Like, no, you can't edit this comment. No, you can't do this without buying a subscription. No, you can't do X. No, you can't do Y. And that's where I just like poke and say, yes, let's turn it into a yes. And that's where you're going to find bugs, like guaranteed.
Very cool. Thank you again, man. This was a really, really cool interview. Thank you so much for giving your Sunday mornings to me for an hour
For
and
sure.
being on the stream and sharing your knowledge. I think I may, I'm making a video on like Prevesk, on how to approach him. I may have to just take that snippet of you explaining your nose and make it a part of the video. So I hope that's okay with you, because it's a very good analogy and a way to teach that to people. This was a very, very informative interview for me, so I'm sure also the chat was the same way. So chat, please give it up for Douglas. Thank you so much for doing this, man. I really appreciate it, and I cannot wait to see what you and your team, or you yourself personally, do at these next life hacking events.
Cheers, man. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you again, hopefully soon.
I'll bring the Red Bull next time. We're gonna do a Red Bull shotgun, and I'm gonna bring the video. I'm gonna see if I can find a video from the last one and show people. And we're gonna record it for the stream.
Yeah, you're gonna get me hooked again, but it's worth it.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate you. Have a great Sunday, and I hopefully see you soon.
Yep. Thanks, Ben.
See you, man. All right, that was a very fun stream. Big shout outs to Douglas for coming on to the stream. Do me a favor. There is a lot of you in the chat today, and I need you all to do me a quick favor. I'm gonna put Douglas's Twitter handle in the chat. I need you to go on Twitter and drop him a follow really quick. I think he's doing a fast right now with bug bounties, but not bug bounties. A fast with, there we go. Takubi just beat me to it, but he's doing a fast right now. I need you to do me a favor. Go and follow him and send us a tweet. Go on my Twitter. You can see I tweeted about us. Reply. Let us know we're watching this. Let us know what you thought of the stream. And if you don't want to, interact with the stream or the Twitch, oh my God, I cannot talk. If you don't want to interact with the tweet, at least go ahead and give him a follow. Show him some love. I think the example of bugs that he shared with you guys, those are fascinating to hear. You don't get to see a lot of hackers share those kinds of stories. Not that they don't want to, it's just mostly hard to share those things with all the NDAs and that kind of stuff. So that was really, really incredibly cool to see Douglas share all that. And so yeah, go ahead and give him a follow, and hopefully we get to get him to come on this stream maybe at one point and do more of these. All right, so I am going to go get something to drink. And when I come back, we are going to do some hacking on Ubisoft. I think this is part 4 of the stream that we're hacking on Ubisoft. So I'm going to take a break, 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes. I'll be back. I got to get some more coffee or more tea since I'm out of tea already. And I'm going to come back and we're going to keep on doing this. And I'm going to do the outro for the video. So if you're watching this on YouTube as a VOD, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for doing this. If you watched the stream and you enjoyed it, also go and give Douglas a follow. And for the rest of you that are live, I'm going to do the outro, and I'm going to come back right away, and we're going to do some hacking.